Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30, and I will call to order the regular Board of Trustees meeting for May 10th, 2022. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Karsbeck?
Here.
Trustee Sorcelli?
Here.
Trustee Stevens?
Here.
Trustee Ayers?
Here.
Trustee Murphy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Grace and Trustee Harvey will be absent this evening.
All right. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is citizen participation. This is an opportunity for folks here or online to speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda. We have 3 signed up, and I know one just walked in here that might want to speak, so I'll start with the ones that have signed up. And this will be Linda Wilson.
Thank you.
And is 1461 is Merlette, is that correct?
That's
All
correct.
right, thank you.
And I've lived at this address since 2017 as the original homeowner. And this evening, I'm sharing 2 concerns with you. First, the Heron Point construction quality issues. The subdivision is 5 years post-completion. There's roof shingles that are being replaced and siding boards that need to be reinforced because they're being blown off. Bathroom mirrors are falling off the walls, and the garage ceiling drywall is falling down due to improper construction methods. When our driveway concrete was replaced under the 1-year warranty agreement, there were places where the concrete was only 2 inches thick. Concrete porches and driveways continue to show deterioration. My second concern is of the street trees. They're also known as lawn trees. Although I come to you tonight representing myself as a homeowner, I'm also a member of our HOA Landscape Committee. And for the last 2 years, I've surveyed the health of our subdivision street trees and submitted a report to the HOA board and Josh Emery, the town's former forester. I can assure you that there are multiple trees that have died and are not healthy in our subdivision. The original trees that were planted did not meet the criteria described in the municipal code, nor were they planted according to the code. A long-term concern for the town is, according to the municipal code 30-2-112, the area where these trees are planted, it's between the street and the sidewalk, should be 6 foot wide. Our strip measures 4 foot 6 inches, which means if the trees meet their expected maturity height of 30 to 40 feet, their roots will be moving the sidewalk concrete and possibly the street surface. And our subdivision is not alone with this. Newer subdivisions are going to have the same root problem due to the developers not following codes. In conclusion, my question to the councils are, does the town hold developers or builders accountable when they do not follow the municipal codes? And if so, what town departments should the homeowners contact in regard to the quality construction of their homes and the tree concerns that we have?
Thank you very much. Administrator Kirk, do you mind speaking to those?
Sure. I think I can address a few of them. With respect to the quality of construction, there's a difference between construction quality and building codes. Building codes typically deal with things that are life safety issues. That doesn't mean that every builder builds quality homes, though they may meet the terms of the building code. That's just a practical reality. And so in those instances, my suggestion would be that that's a civil issue between the builder and the homeowner. With respect to the street trees, as we've talked about a lot with this board in the past, street trees are the responsibility of the homeowner, not the town, both for maintenance and replacement. Let's see, and there is an instance, or there are plenty of instances around town where former subdivisions or older subdivisions, this one's not that old, but in the context of our growth, it was one of the first, It was built before I got here 4.5 years ago, so 5 years plus or minus. And our codes were very different back then, as many of you know. We've practically rewritten our development code from top to bottom, and so there are a lot of development codes that are on the books today that were not on the books then. So it's, the size of tree lawns is a good example. That was not a requirement. It is today. That was not a requirement. I think when that subdivision was built, excuse me, I'd have to go back and confirm, but I'm pretty certain that's the case.
That's my recollection too. So
Yeah.
with the, and this is the same with the trees that were planted. In fact, one of the guys on the tree committee joined the tree committee because improper trees were being planted, and then we updated the preferred, I forgot what it's called, preferred tree list.
We made
But-
major changes to our landscape guidelines and our landscape requirements, including tree plantings, I think in late 2018, which would have been after the subdivision was constructed.
And I know our nursery, because of these issues, and it's not just Heron Point, there's another one too, that were built early on with kind of substandard practices. The tree nursery was kind of depleted because of replenishing some of those trees, is that correct? But we're building a new nursery?
We have a current nursery that has been used up. We use those trees primarily around town, on stretches of sidewalk or tree lawn that are not part of the homeowner's front yard. A good example might be like at Wagner Farm or on South Berthoud Parkway. Excuse me, where we might install some trees. We do those shadow plantings in parks. We've done a lot of shadow plantings in Fickle Park and other locations.
So if there's a dead tree though, and one of these newer homes, can that be used?
If it's within the 2-year warranty period, the developer is responsible to replace it. After the 2-year warranty, it's the homeowner's responsibility.
Can they, I truly don't know the answer, and I know Sean's new enough, I don't know if he knows either, but can they apply for the town to do, for the replacement program?
So we have a replacement program that I believe is limited on caliper size with the intent that we're not replacing new trees all the time. And the other unfortunate reality is even when they're planted properly, a lot of times the trees die because they don't get taken care of. And so they're typically on the homeowner's irrigation system. They're often not on a separate zone, so they just get watered from the yard or they don't get watered at all. And so there are a lot of instances where trees are dying around town and they're not being properly maintained or taken care of. And then sometimes they are and they die anyway. Frost kill in the wintertime, those kinds of things, so.
Okay.
We do have a street tree replacement program. I have to confirm because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think there's a minimum caliper size of 4 inches.
You're right. Yep, you're right. I
So-
forgot about that. I was thinking that you could have you apply for that, but, so yes, the caliper size or the minimum diameter is not for newer trees. If you'd like to email me, I can see what we could do, but as far as using this program, we can't really use the town
Yes,
nursery
I
for that.
talked to Josh Embry about it, and he said there wasn't anything available. But in our instance, we replaced our tree and we pulled our Kentucky coffee tree up. It had 3 branches on it. It was 15 foot tall. The roots were girdled around it. It had 4 years growth. Nothing happened. So it's the quality of the trees that are being put in there also. And
Yeah, and I think that goes back to practices of a bygone era, hopefully. But certainly, like, I know this was a big topic of conversation after I was initially hired in 2018. This was something that had already started before I got here and was kind of being worked on by staff and the town board at the time to update both the requirements for new tree plantings, to change the codes with respect to the width of tree lawns, distances planted away from water lines and utility infrastructure. All those details all got changed, I know, after this subdivision was constructed.
I noticed there was a change from 5 feet to 6 feet,
Yeah.
but still, it's under, and it's gonna be a problem.
Thank you for putting that on our minds here.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Our code is now 6 feet, is that correct, on tree lawns? Then we're good. Okay, yeah, just wanna make sure that.
Are you here?
Yeah.
That was you?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. Next, Brian Lack, 706 7th, correct?
Yeah, Brian Locke, 706 7th Street. first, thanks you guys for giving your time, probably your most valuable commodity. Super appreciate that. And loving what's happening out at the roundabout. Great entry to Berthoud now. It's going to be fantastic when all those new plantings come into grow. And then I wanted to just also touch base on the bike park. I got to watch the meeting last night. It was only posted very recently. And I just wanted to add a few thoughts. I wasn't able to attend that meeting. One of the first things that comes to my mind is that I would urge the board to look for compromise instead of just walking away from the project because of some legitimate concerns. I think that it's a worthwhile enough project that it would be really a good thing to try and seek some compromise, not to put it off for too long. It's in our budget. I'd love to see something happen out there. Part of the reason I'd love to see something happen out there, we're part of the reason that in our budget we're spending $15,000, I believe, for a carnival for the youth of Berthoud is, there's not a lot of things for these kids to do, and that leads to a lot of problems. I think Mike Grace is now going to be the Youth Advisory Committee liaison. I would urge him to talk with the youth and see what their take on it is. And I know there was a lot of concern about vandalism and Lover's Lane and druggies going down there. We've got the park at the reservoir. To my knowledge, it hasn't really been an issue down there. And I do know that in today's world with cameras, there are a lot of things we can do to mitigate for the lowest common denominator, but I don't think that we should just write something off based on the lowest common denominator of a few bad apples. Generally, vandalism happens from outliers. It's not a large group of people. You get those few outliers, many times the problem goes away. And that's all. So again, thank you for considering my thoughts. I hope that we don't put it off for too long and that we can seek some form of compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lack. Next, Ben Zink.
Evening. Ben Zink, 739 Mountain Avenue. And I'm here, I saw the last meeting about the bike park, and that's the reason I'm here. I'm also fortunate enough to be co-owner to Berthoud Bicycle for the past 8 years, so I get a lot of feedback on bikes. And I can say that the bike pump track and bike park is very well supported through families and people I interact with. I view last meeting as positive, and I support the vote that you all took. You see it as a procedural pause, which was warranted, especially with new trustees, which is greatly appreciated being in those seats. Going forward, I would ask for due diligence and see how important this project has been for years. Once you do some research and see the work that's been into it, the funding that is there for it, the pitch from the town of having a regional draw, world-class, words like that, you'll see that it is going to be an accent for Berthoud, no question about it. And I agree with Mr. Lack that they're solvable problems. There's no reason to stub our toe and stop. It's an issue, and you all have the wherewithal and the capability to move forward with it, and that's what I hope happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Len Goldenfinnig, 1000 Lake Avenue. I'm an avid cyclist and mountain biker, and yes, I rode my bike here this evening. And a little history with Mr. Mayor, as I served as the chair of the Port Committee, Parks, Open Space, Recreation, and Trails Committee, from 2016 to 2020. So a lot of history there. So thank you all for, again, for your time, what you're doing. As far as a lot of the concerns that were brought up by citizens at the last meeting, I would just ask you to look at the sampling, as mentioned, as Berthoud Reservoir. There's the trail system going in at Heron Lakes, Hillsdale Park, the high school grounds, town park. Look at any of the other public spaces that we have as an example of what's going to happen at a Berthoud Bike Park coming in. Cycling or biking is a very popular passive recreational activity in Colorado, particularly here in the North Front Range. We are all aware of bike lanes and bike paths and mountain bike trail systems. Regional high schools have mountain bike teams. There are college teams, and there are even scholarships available for kids to earn for going to college for mountain biking and cycling. A bike park is an enabler for such opportunities. Bike parks are high-value amenities for communities and citizens. They provide families and kids outdoor opportunities to learn and grow, and not just about biking. Valmont Bike Park in Boulder is well regarded and a well-used facility. Fort Collins is in the process of establishing a bike park. Erie built one. Estes Park built one down on the lake there. Citizens of Berthoud voted a few years ago to add a Berthoud sales tax specifically for recreational amenities. So think about that. The citizens chose to pay for this, to pay for recreational amenities. Citizens have already spoken. They want recreation close to home. The Berthoud Bike Park has been part of the Port Master Plan for several years. Town staff has done an excellent job communicating the Port Plan with the public. The Berthoud Bike Park plans have been public knowledge for several years. Early last year, in the middle of the pandemic, town staff also heavily advertised a public survey for feedback on the Berthoud Bike Park. They received significant feedback, and I think they've incorporated that very well into the planning. Staff has also done oops, I touched something here. Staff has also done an excellent job in being a good neighbor by increasing the buffer zone between the bike park plans, and which is actually at the detriment of the size of the bike park capacity there. So I plead with you that citizens and town staff have done everything right in preparation for the Berthoud Bike Park. Funding is ready. The contractor is ready. Please deliver this amenity to the people that said they are willing to pay for and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldenfinnig. Is there anyone else in the room? Clerk, do you have anyone online?
Yes, we do. Mayor, we have Maureen Dower ready to speak.
Okay. Maureen, are you there?
Yes, I sure am. Thank you.
Here you
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. Thank you to town staff, to the trustees and Mayor. Thank you for your service. As was stated before, it is a tough job, and I really appreciate all of you giving of your time to make the best decisions for the town of Berthoud. I just want to reiterate and also compliment two prior speakers, Mr. Locke and Mr. Goldenfinnig. They covered the details of the bike park issue, which is what I'm here for today. And with that, I just wanted to add a few things. As they said, We already have funding. It's been through public discourse for years now. This has been part of the plan for quite some time. So this is not new. People did have a lot of time for public input. There were multiple public meetings, as was stated before. So although some people may feel that this is something new and unexpected, it actually has been advertised quite widely, and the public hasn't been invited. I appreciate that staff and trustees want to take a pause just to review. However, as was stated before, it's been in the works. We have the funding, we have the contractor. People have been looking forward to this. Bike parks, and this is my personal experience, these bike parks are filled with dads and kids and summertime camps like Avid for Adventure. My own son, we drove him all the way down to Boulder when he was younger to go to an Avid for Adventure summer camp that was 2 weeks long. And they had that camp all summer long, all the way down in Boulder. And there were lots of families who traveled from all over the area to take their kids to that bike park. It's a great place for kids to hang out, for tweens, for teens. It gives them something to do. As far as, having people, who are going to use drugs or alcoholic beverages, the people who are there during the day, during daylight hours, they're athletic people. They care about their health. They care about their physical abilities. They are not the ones who are going to sit there and smoke weed, drink alcohol, or do other drugs. They care too much about their bodies, their athletic abilities. So in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that I do believe that this is something that has been reviewed. I would strongly encourage the town board to take up this issue and review it again, maybe with some minor concessions to the neighbors that are right there. However, this property has been a town-owned property for many years, and although the people who back to it probably were hoping that it would stay a farm field forever, that is not the way things work here in Colorado, and landowners have their rights. In any case, the final point being that I do think the trustees, the town should bring it to the trustees again. I would encourage you to review whatever minor changes there might be to increase privacy for those homeowners. But please do move ahead with this now. We've got everything lined up. And I don't think that we should delay it any further. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate everything that you guys do. Oh, and one last comment about crime. I think the most crime-ridden place in town is actually by the high school. So in the bushes behind the fields. So if we're going to be concerned about drug use and such, that might be a good place for Sergeant Anderson to start. And we'll see how the bike park goes later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Clerk, do we have anyone else online?
We do not.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you all for speaking. I just want to recap of what did happen on last Tuesday. There was no votes on the bike park. Obviously, you guys watched it. There was concern from the residents in the area, and they were respectful, and I think some of those concerns were valid. That's my point of view. But there was no votes. It seems like the whole board is on board with the bike park. Administrator Kirk had some creative ideas on how we might be able to help out some of those residents in the area. I don't know if those are ready to be public, so I won't share them, but some of them
Yeah,
just a
they
reorientation. Would you mind speaking to any of those?
Sure, yeah, and from a staff perspective, we'd like to bring it back to you for consideration, maybe as early as the next meeting. We've looked at, we went through this exercise once before, in terms of location of the parking lot and the bathroom, which I think are really I don't know if it's really the bike park that's of concern, or it's the location of the parking lot and the restroom building. We can push it farther to the north and to the west. It increases cost primarily because we have to install a small pump station to take the sewage from the bathrooms because it won't gravity flow to the sewer line on Meadowlark. That was the primary driver for locating the parking lot and the bathrooms where they were. Obviously, we went through port committee review and felt like we'd even pushed it farther to the north, as far north as we felt like we could get it. Felt like that was sufficient. But I've asked our engineering firm to look at making those modifications and give us a cost estimate, so at least we know what that might look like today. We looked at that a year and a half ago, but as you can imagine, prices have changed fairly significantly. So it may be in the grand scheme of things, it may not be a significant expense. We may be able to absorb it within the existing budget. I think we're going to recommend to you that we not build the asphalt pump track as part of this initial development. We'll leave space for it, but because that portion of the pump track costs basically as much as the entire rest of the project, we felt like perhaps that might not be the best path forward today within our existing budget. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at, we were gonna put cameras out there anyway. We'll make that abundantly clear to everyone that cameras were gonna be out at the parking lot and restrooms to begin with. And we'll have plenty of signage. I actually think moving the parking lot to the west might be a good thing, because it'll be really easily visible from 287 in that condition. So the more visible things are, the more traffic they get, the safer they are typically. So we're working through all those details. We have an updated concept plan, and hopefully have some updated engineering estimates for you just in the next 2 weeks.
Right?
Is there a way we can reach out to the homeowners that came with concerns and just ask for their creative solutions? Because they had a lot of good ideas that might help, even if we don't implement them, bring some of their feedback to the table, and then it helps them be part of the solution so that they have buy-in with the final product too.
Yep.
Cool.
I have one comment. I don't know what the wildlife issue, I don't know if that really plays into it, as far as elk being there, and a lot of people saying they're seeing some. Is it possible that it's a wildlife, part of it could be a wildlife refuge or anything like that, or is that really not a concern?
Well, it's an active farm today, so I don't know that I would classify it as a wildlife refuge.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that wildlife doesn't move through that corridor down to the lake. I'm sure they do. They won't be impeded from doing that. When the bike park's constructed, there might be more people there, but as you know, I mean, there were elk on Mountain Avenue just a couple weeks ago. So
That's true. So I think we should tear down Mountain
So I
Avenue.
don't,
Make it a wildlife refuge?
yeah, make it a wildlife refuge. Yeah, I don't mean to be flippant about it.
No, I know
certainly,
what you're
yeah.
saying.
But the bike park is really, frankly, is kind of low intensity. We're talking about a gravel parking lot with some dark sky parking lot lights, a small restroom building, and then some dirt trails and jumps and
And I only brought that up because it was
Yeah.
brought up during that meeting
Sure.
as well.
pushing the parking lot to the north and to the west expands the buffer from a little over 100 feet to closer to 200 feet. So I'm sure that animals can work through a 200-foot wide swath of grass just fine.
While we're on the topic, I don't know, it might be a reports thing, but I think if this is coming back to the board, it should be the track and the pump track and the.
We'll bring it both, but I'm just kind of giving you a little preview. If you guys want to spend the extra money, I think we have it. We can. You just have to make a budget amendment. But we'll talk through that when we bring it back to you.
I had a question as well. It seemed like a lot of the comments last meeting revolved around the southern end being the primary access point. Were there explorations on the north side of making that? Is that kind of blow our budget out of the water? Okay.
Yeah. There will be part of the. There's two facets of that conversation. I won't belabor the point too much, but we can certainly talk through it more as we go. But part of it is that the north side of the park hadn't been designed at the time. The bike park was always intended to be phase one. The access was always intended to be from the south, despite what may have been presented at the last meeting. That was always the intention. And I think that's clear from the document if you look at it. But you also have to kind of understand it. So, if you took a cursory glance at it, you might have assumed that was not the case. That's been the case from the beginning. Again, part of the reason why we didn't want to build an access from the north as part of that initial phase was that the rest of the park hadn't been designed. And so, building an access road and a parking lot then kind of sets the terms for what the rest of that park looks like. We are pretty far along into design today. There will be a parking lot on the north end in the future. It'll be larger, it'll be very different. But I think the primary access to the bike park will still be on the south, but you'll be able to access it from both directions in the future.
All right, you good?
I have a bunch to say, but it's from the board committee meeting, so I guess I can save that for the
Reports,
unless you
yeah.
guys want me to.
Sure.
I mean, basically, reports for it, and we should have it in front of us. Is what I said. So.
All right, thank you. Doesn't sound, we have no more online, right?
No. we
Okay.
don't.
Well, thank you everyone for speaking up on both the trees, the house quality, and on the bike and park and pump track. We're gonna head and move on now to the consent agenda. This is for routine items. We have 3 items on there. Would any trustees like any of the items move from the consent agenda?
I would move to combine and approve the consent
Right.
agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Stevens has moved to approve the consent agenda. Trustee Murphy has seconded it. Is there any final conversation on this? Quick roll call vote, please.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
trustee Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Soriselli,
Yes.
trustee Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes, okay. Next on the agenda is the town board meeting duration resolution. And this will be introduced by Clerk Zamora.
Good evening, Mayor Karspeck and trustees. The next item on the agenda is a resolution that would place limitations on the duration of regular town board meetings. You'll see in the resolution that it would limit the meeting time to end at 9 p.m. unless there is a unanimous vote by the town board members that are present at that meeting to extend beyond that time. Any items at the meeting not heard by that time would then automatically move forward to a future meeting or to a special meeting if it is deemed to be necessary. This did originally come up at the April 26th board meeting by Trustee Sorcelli, and so I did work with Attorney Smith to draft the resolution and bring it before the town board. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have this evening.
Thank you. Any questions? Clerk, from your experience, you were at a previous municipality, this was in effect, was it the same way, a unanimous vote?
Yes, it was.
So what if you have one person, I mean, I'm just trying to think.
So with it being written as it is, requiring a unanimous vote, if you do have one trustee or the mayor perhaps that doesn't want to extend past 9 p.m., then unfortunately the meeting would have to end at 9 p.m. if that is not unanimous.
No other questions, anyone else?
I thought we had talked about 9:30 being more practical instead of 9. Was that correct?
That is my recollection too.
And we can certainly change that to 9:30.
Thank you, Trustee
That
Sorcelli.
is what the board
Was
wishes
it
to
more
do.
And I'll have to be honest, I thought it was unanimous the other way, not unanimous for it, but I guess that works too.
Actually have
Yeah, go ahead.
probably similar concerns to that as well, just because, I don't want to be the person who, stops it from starting, but I also don't want to set a precedent in the future where if one person is completely against everything from moving forward, I don't know if that should necessarily stop the meeting if there's something that needs to be done, if there's especially if there's a hot button issue or something like that. I don't want necessarily in the future, like I said, for a person to be able to derail the entire conversation, which could be negative to a crowded meeting. It could be negative to the presentations, to any kind of ideas that people have at the time, to extend that to the next week or the week after. So I'm concerned about the unanimous part.
What about, well, I mean, 4 out of 5 would be majority. What about 6 out of 7 or 5 out of 7?
I think that would be challenging only in this case like tonight where you don't have 6.
Yeah, those present, huh? Okay.
Just a majority?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, a simple majority would be the easy way to adjust to that.
We can certainly make that change and.
Do you have any thoughts of that on the spot? I know on the
Right.
spot ideas aren't the best, but I'm just trying to think of the worst case scenario here, and I can't think of one, but that we might need.
There's definitely arguments going both ways, just as the different town board members have described in this discussion. We could change that to indicate that it would be a simple majority, and that may be kind of the simplest way to go with that, so that we don't end up with a situation as Trustee Ayers described, where there's one member that can kind of stop the meeting from progressing. So that's certainly something that we can change. And then as far as the end time, I apologize if 9:30 was the time that was discussed. I thought it was 9, and we can certainly make that change as well.
Does that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Can we just move and make those changes?
Yes.
Any other questions for clerk? I did promise the audience I'd open it up to the public. Do we have anything else for Clerk Smart while he's up there? Thank you very much. Well, this time I'll open it up to the audience. Is there anyone in the room or online that would like to speak to this? Okay, seeing and hearing none, bring it back to the board. Sounds like we're in support. And the amendments would be 9:30 and also a simple majority instead of a unanimous.
Yeah, and I think you would just say a majority vote.
A majority.
That,
Okay.
that's interpreted as a simple majority, so.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve resolution 2022-03 with the amendments of 9:30 and a majority vote? Or would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Stevens has moved. Is that Trustee Ayers has seconded? Any final discussion on this? Clerk, may roll call vote, please.
Trustee Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Stevens,
Yes.
Trustee Sorseli,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Mayor Karsnag.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Congrats, me. That's a great idea.
Congrats to all.
Does that start right now, or can we go till 11 tonight?
It's not till it's signed, right? So this one's going till midnight. Okay, our last regular agenda item will be the Colorado Big Thompson water purchase. And this will be introduced by Ken Matthews, our Public Works Director.
Actually, Pete Johnson is going to be presenting.
Oh, all right, Pete Johnson, thank you. With Branish Resh, I always get it wrong, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I don't fault you for it.
Welcome back.
I get it wrong from time to time myself. Thank you. And for those of you I haven't met before, it's nice to see some new faces up here. What I brought to you tonight for your consideration is a purchase contract for 50 CBT units. For those of you that may not be a little bit less familiar with CBT units, these are units in the Colorado Big Thompson project, which is a project operated by the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. And so this is a fairly unique opportunity in the market today to purchase a substantial chunk of CBT units. We typically see these units more in the nature of single-digit number of units, or maybe 20 or so at the most. But this is an opportunity to purchase 50 of these units at a time, and so that was why we felt like it was a good opportunity for the town to take advantage of. Several of you probably know already that the town has a substantial portfolio of CBT units already, and so this would simply add to that. And it's a water source that the town has already connected and tapped into, so it wouldn't require any additional infrastructure, or really doesn't require much other than some paperwork to transfer the units from the Thompson School District to the town. As you can see in the purchase contract, it's not cheap water, but it is reliable water, and water that's basically available at a phone call to the Northern Colorado Conservancy District, and deliverable to the town's treatment plant through the pipeline that's already constructed and operational. So it's a fairly straightforward purchase process that some of you are probably all too familiar with already. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have, or any comments.
Questions?
I just have one. How did this come available?
It's sort of a unique situation where the school district, they have a pond where they were delivering this water and using it for some raw water irrigation of their grounds, and For a number of reasons, they just didn't really like the way that system worked for them, and so they decided to go with potable water that's now being provided by Loveland for their irrigation, and so they decided to put these on the market. And we have brokers that the town has engaged for these types of transactions, and so one of those brokers brought this opportunity to our attention, and that's how we learned about it.
All right, I like it.
So this is a Loveland school that this is, or Loveland operations, not any Berthoud pond.
That's right. Yep.
That's all I have there. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
My understanding was that it was attached to a Wool Clark Middle School, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and how did the 68,000 per come about as a price?
So it's basically just our read of the market right now. There are other municipalities that are out there right now buying up substantial chunks of CBT at around 65,000. So that has basically set the floor for the market at this stage. And the information we got from the broker that arranged this deal is that we basically just barely outbid some of the other bidders at the 68,000 price point. So as you all probably know, the CBT units in that market is only going in one direction right now. So we felt like it was a reasonable bid, and good enough for us to be able to secure the opportunity, but not too unrealistic in light of where the market is right now.
We'll have you.
If I could just add briefly for the board's benefit, you all know that we have a cash and loop program where builders or developers pay a price per SFE or single family equivalent when they come and build a house. We put that in a bank in a raw water fund so that we can go out and make these purchases. We have about $31 million in that fund as of the end of March. Our accounting is always a couple months behind. So we have plenty of money to buy this water. It's a good source of water. It's a reliable source of water. And like Pete said, big chunks don't often come up. So it's a good opportunity for us to get a decent amount at one time.
Yeah, and just one additional note on that front too is that what we're hearing from brokers in terms of the market is that actually municipalities and buyers that are out there looking for larger chunks are now paying a higher price per unit for larger chunks of these units, just because of the benefit of being able to obtain a larger volume in a single transaction and not have to be out there hunting down 5 shares at a time, for example.
Okay, well, I could go on all night. I think it's very interesting. But I'm glad we see a big block of that. So 50 units would be, what are we, 100 houses, or do you know? I guess if we're going by SFEs, I don't know.
It's 0.6 per unit, 0.6 acre feet per unit, which is basically 1.5 houses per unit.
Yep.
We use 0.4 acre feet per house as a planning number, which is pretty darn close to the actual kind of average. So 75 homes.
Yep, 75.
Nothing else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I want to open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this? Online?
There is not.
Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Sounds like we're in support. Would anyone like to move on?
I'll move. I move to authorize the town administrator to execute a contract for the purchase of the CBT units substantially in the form presented in Amendment 1 and other related documents necessary to complete the purchase of the CBT units.
I will second.
Okay, Trustee Saraceli has moved on this. Trustee Stevens has seconded. Any final discussion on this? Clerk, we have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Saraceli?
Yes.
Trustee Ayers?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck?
Yes. All right. From here, I believe we're just going to go right into report. Are we taking action tonight? Or not? Guessing not. Okay. So we'll move on to reports for everyone in the room here, and then we'll go off to an executive session and adjourn from that. With elected official reports, we'll start out with Trustee Saraceli.
I have nothing to report. I just wanted to comment that I really appreciated the last meeting and how the board was responsive to the public feedback, and just that dynamic felt really open for the public to come in and share what they're concerned about without feeling intimidated or worried about what they had to say. And then also tonight as well, hearing the other perspective was equally beneficial, and I just appreciate the board's response to listening and then creating solutions that there's compromise, so I just wanted to say that was awesome.
Trustee Stevens?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, I wasn't gonna say anything, but very well said. The only thing I have on reports is I've been getting some emails as far as the Cedar Drive situation is, again. The main question is there a time frame where the neighborhood could expect improvements on that sprinkler system? Is there anything in the works for that as far as upgrade or replacement of that sprinkler system?
No hard timeline, no. I mean, in all honesty, none of that had been discussed until 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
It's one of those things that median's been in existence in pretty much the same way for 30 years, and then we brought up a topic that we hadn't really discussed or considered in terms of upgrading irrigation systems and those kinds of things. So we heard all that. As you can imagine, our parks crews are very busy right now, getting things back up and rolling. So no, we don't have a firm timeline on that.
Is that something that we could send
And again,
report, or
that was never a project for us until they brought, until a couple of residents brought it up 2 weeks ago. So,
Is
it'll
that
take us a little time to figure that out.
Is that even a port issue?
I don't think so. No, I
Because
think it's just a
median?
maintenance issue.
Okay.
Whether it's a park or a median, I think is irrelevant. We don't typically take maintenance issues to the board committee just because that's not really a necessity in most cases, or really in any. But yeah, I mean, I think not to be wishy-washy, I just don't have an answer for you. I mean, I think is the honest truth. I don't have a timeline for when we'll pick up all the ideas they shared with us 2 weeks ago and make those happen.
Okay, I know another one of the concerns was the sidewalks. And I understand, and I wanted to talk about that in this forum. I understand that the sidewalks in front of people's homes are the responsibility of the homeowner, but there is a sidewalk share program that they can investigate and be part of. I wanted that, rather than just going to one person, I wanted to say that publicly, so.
Yeah. And I know Mr. Meyer sent us an email maybe almost a week ago.
Okay.
Kind of went, sometimes when you send an email to 4 or 5 people, nobody knows who to respond. I think we all kind of assumed someone else was responding, and so that's our fault internally for not making it clear who was going to respond.
Okay. And that's all I'm doing is responding.
Yes, thank you for that, Lonnie, or Trustee Stevens. And you're right, the sidewalk is the responsibility of the homeowner. The caveat is that when we go do road maintenance projects, we typically upgrade or update the sidewalks in that area. We spent over $100,000 on sidewalk repair in that neighborhood just 3 or 4 years ago when we were doing some road resurfacing. So that doesn't mean that every broken sidewalk got repaired, but we did invest a fairly decent amount of money there upgrading sidewalks while we were doing some road maintenance on the adjacent roadways.
Well, I do know that we've spent the safe routes to school. Could that have been part of that?
No, Safe Routes to School won't pay for maintenance problems.
Okay.
In my experience, anyway, the Safe Routes to School program is intended to create new routes that don't exist, or to eliminate gaps in existing routes. Where you got a nice continuous mile of sidewalk, and you got 2 blocks where there's no sidewalk, and the kids have to walk on the street. Those are the kinds of things that Safe Routes to School pays for, but not maintenance.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Trustee Murphy?
Yeah, got a couple of things. Regarding the tree committee, I'm looking forward to meeting with all those folks next week. And as it was brought up, Josh Embry is no longer with the town as the town forester and open space manager. Hope we can get that position filled sometime soon. Just going over the meeting last week, I was really happy with my first meeting and how things went. I certainly feel like there's room for improvement on a lot of things, particularly bringing up hiring a communications director or some form of that position. I was wondering if it would be possible for us to scope that position and kind of discuss.
If I may, and I hope the board doesn't take this the wrong way, I would love to have your feedback. If you'd like to prioritize us hiring a communications person, we can certainly do that. But staffing is typically in my purview, so.
Well, we brought this up at the last agenda too. I think we do have
And for what it's worth, I intend to hire a communications person anyway.
I see what you're saying, but we talked about this the last retreat too, so I agree with you. I agree with you too. I see what you're saying. So that's good to know.
Aside from that, I've kind of done some outreach. Right now, there's an energy efficiency cohort that's operating to the south of us. They have Boulder County, along with most of the municipalities south of us, involved. As you guys know, we're on 2018 IECC right now with, from what Kurt said to me, we'll be moving to 2021, hopefully by the end of the year. And I know you got some of these emails, maybe Chris. As for this energy efficiency cohort, right now it's kind of educational setup between the municipalities. It's low cost, it's like $1,000 I think per town to be involved. They've conducted their first phase where they're basically upgrading all these towns to 2021 by the end of the year. The second phase, they're going to be starting in the fall, where they're actually setting out a roadmap for higher standards, moving towards net zero by tentatively 2035. And I was just wondering if there was interest in going above and beyond 2021.
I'm competitive, so I'm always.
Yeah, I mean.
So IECC, is that International Energy Conservation Code?
Yes, I believe.
Okay, and what's the cohort, is Boulder County municipalities, there's no Larimer?
So Boulder County is involved along with Longmont, possibly Boulder, Louisville, Erie, a couple other municipalities down there. And they're just looking for more of a cohesive plan, so architects, builders, all can be operating under one kind of set of codes. Right now, Colorado obviously is one of those states that doesn't have a consistent code across the board. Right now, the state is moving that direction with legislation that's going through the State House right now. So when people upgrade their energy codes along with their building codes, they will have to either move to 21 or possibly 24 in the coming years. So this is just one of those areas where I feel like we could be really proactive, but also be consistent with our neighbors and stuff, while leading kind of the area of energy efficiency, so.
Yeah, I don't know where to go from here. It sounds like you already talked to Kurt.
Yeah, I talked to the folks that are kind of heading up this cohort. Right now, they're kind of in a dead time during the summer and stuff between these two phases they're conducting. But I could certainly bring some of them in to actually talk to us if you guys would be interested in that for one of these meetings.
I would be. I also, maybe if Kurt's coming to us, Director Freeze is coming to us with the 2020, maybe he could just bring, it might be a lot of work, but the difference between a 2020 and a 2022, is that what you're saying?
Well, right now we're moving towards 21, and from what I talked to Kurt about was basically what kind of timeline we're looking at. We'll likely move to approve that this fall for starting next year. But this is kind of going above and beyond. We already have the electric vehicle standards in place that are coming with 21, along with some of the solar stuff. But there's additional features towards energy efficiency that we might want to take a look at from my standpoint, just to be prepared and be ahead of the curve on these things. So.
If I may, Mayor Karspek, I think this is good timing. I met with Heidi, and I'm going to butcher her last name because I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Pruis, I think is how you pronounce it, from Larimer County. She's the Climate Smart Sustainability Program Manager. Just met with her yesterday. The county is working on what they're calling Climate Smart, a regional approach to kind of sustainability and setting some some big picture goals. They started with a framework process. They had a handful of meetings over the last 4 or 5 months to develop this framework. But then now they're going out and doing community outreach. That's part of the reason why I spoke with her yesterday. I'm going to forward the board their initial report just for some context for you. It'll kind of explain what their intent is and then also kind of where they see the focus areas. There was big talk about the idea of sustainability versus, I think a lot of it started with climate action specifically, and then they realized, there's broader support for kind of a more wide-ranging approach to sustainability, both environmental, social, not both, including environmental, social, and economic sustainability. And how do we address all of those things regionally together? So building codes is part of that, and some other kind of very specific. I don't know why I'm at a loss for words for what the proper term is, but again, kind of like climate goals and those things, but then also talking about how do we strengthen our economy, make it more resilient, how do we handle social issues that might be a negative impact to the region, those kinds of things. So anyway, I think all that's coming forward and kind of in line with what you're talking about, Trustee Murphy. So I'll forward that report out to everyone, and I think this would be a great topic for our retreat when we're able to get that organized, which I'll talk to you about tonight a little bit, and talk about, where maybe there are some goals we want to set as a community we want to try to reach and achieve.
Yeah, I think that's great. And maybe if at the retreat, since it has to be done by fall.
Yeah, we've
that's
got
a
time,
major
so.
break point there, but I think
Absolutely.
it'd be great. Anything else?
No,
Okay.
that's all I've got for tonight.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Trustee Ayers.
So the
Ayers.
port meeting was last week. They gave a rundown of all of the park projects that are upcoming. I will spare you guys, there are a lot. I can give you details specifically if you want. Some things that stood out were they were upset that the bike park didn't get passed, which we talked about today, right? So obviously they would like that to get back on the agenda moving forward with, at least some discussion on compromises, some different ways to organize, to orient, et cetera, et cetera. So they were pretty adamant about that because as some of the people said today, the community outreach over the past few years has elicited a lot of responses, and it is sort of one of the things that the town wants at the citizens of the town want at the top of the list. So that was kind of the longest discussion. They also are going to have a tour June 1st to tour some of the upcoming projects, and I think Mr. Knoll said that they were going to open that up to the trustees. They're just kind of looking at the logistics of getting everyone together and moving around on the tour if you guys are interested. And what else? Skatapalooza apparently was a huge success. Everyone got out with their skateboards, rollerblades, et cetera, et cetera. Apparently the parking lot was full, so everyone's outside having a good time.
Do you know the detail? I just happened to be in the area and I was blown away. It was awesome. Like video cameras and people everywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. So is that Denver athletes or something?
Yeah, I was not really understanding what happened either.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was,
it's something our rec staff put together. Some companies out of Denver, skate apparel or equipment companies, had reached out. It was skate demos. There were competitions.
So the Parks and Rec put this
music,
on.
food trucks. Yeah, our
it-
recreation
it was
team
great.
put it on. And
That was really happy.
we did advertise it a lot on our social media pages, but didn't think to mention it to you guys here, so I apologize for that.
I did see the ads and my kids went, thought it was really awesome.
We're all skaters here.
Yeah,
So we're
they came home with skateboards, so.
They did?
They were stoked, yeah, they're like, he gave us skateboards.
They gave them?
They were a little bit like
They
used,
skipped
but.
me out. That's awesome.
It was fun.
I guess that's it for the port. Like I said, if you guys want specific about any of the updates, just let me know. I didn't want to kind of go through everything. And then now that Cedar has come up again tonight. I have a question about safety concerns, since it's not a park of the city, but apparently the entire neighborhood and some of the adjoining neighborhoods are using it as a park. Are there any sort of laws that they're breaking by doing that? Any sort of ADA non-compliance issues from having a median be a de facto park?
I don't think they're breaking any. We don't classify it as a park, although I think we all heard that that's how the community uses it. I think there are concerns that we might have, especially as we had time to digest a lot of the feedback we got about officially making it a park in the middle of the road. For exactly the reasons I think you're suggesting, both accessibility and then also safety. And so I think, our intent is to take care of some maintenance out there. I think we would generally do anyway, but might take a little more aggressive approach. We might consider swapping out some sprinkler heads and those kinds of things, and then generally leave it the way it is.
Okay.
And if folks use it because it's a grass spot and they can go out there and throw the ball or walk their dog or whatever, more power to them.
Okay. That was my question.
At least that's my perspective anyway.
And I guess final thing from last meeting, there were a lot of people, and I'm not making a comment one way or the other on the issue, but there seemed to be a lot of confusion about the different notices that were going around in the town, and I probably could ask you this over email instead of bringing them now. What are the distances that people get notices, and why are the distances different? And are there certain kinds of notices that go wider, or is that possibly something that we should think about doing, especially for things like the bike park, which everyone in the town is going to utilize, which means people in the town are going to be utilizing neighborhood streets. It's going to be affecting those residents differently. Is there a process that maybe we should look at to expand the notices on certain kinds of projects, I guess?
So the answer, I think, to your first question is that notices in terms of the radius are dictated by code and depends on the type of issue that we're dealing with. Some of those noticing requirements are in state statute, like for metro districts, for instance. State statute controls how those notices go out. For planning notices, we have specific noticing requirements based on the type of application that it is.
1,500 feet? That's in my head.
I think it's 1,000 feet generally for most planning applications now, which is actually significantly higher than most places, if not all that I'm really aware of. 500 feet is pretty typical. We made it 1,000 a few years ago. We don't typically notice people for our own projects, other than to let them know construction is starting so that they're aware and they're not surprised when within a specific radius. Our noticing typically is through the newspaper, our website, social media, our newsletter. That's typically where we run projects out to the entire community. And whether or not folks agree with me, and I think there's value in noticing neighbors early in the process. I think we learned that the hard way 2 weeks ago. But the bike park is a good example. Let's say the 5 neighbors showed up and said, we are adamantly opposed to this project, we don't want it here, which is not, I don't think, what they said, but let's say that was the case. Would the community then say, well, I guess we won't build the park? And so it's kind of an interesting balance between we're noticing involving as many people in the community as possible rather than focusing on a very specific set of individuals. That said, I think there's good reason to do that early in the process. And let the port committee, the board, whoever make those decisions as we move forward. I think we would do that if we did something. Well, we are going to do that with downtown, with local businesses. We really shouldn't treat residents as any different. So
this kind of goes on the maze thing too.
Communication?
Well, let these the existing. This is it's such a unique thing. I'm sorry. How many opportunities we have to build a park in an existing area. So I don't see it happening too much, but is there value to the residents that already came in to let them know somehow?
Yeah, we fully intend to notice them. And
then in the future, I mean, it seems so rare that would have another opportunity to build a park in an existing area, but I think there is to let people in the area know construction no matter what.
And we did notice them, actually, that's like how the Cedar Drive residents found out, right? We sent out notices and said, hey, we're getting ready to do some reconstruction work on the median here. So we do notice, I think noticing early in the process is the key.
Well,
And then, the board has to make a decision about whether a small group controls the discussion or whether or not they look at a broad cross-section of the community and what the community wants, and that's part of the public process, right? That's just the nature of things.
well, if I could speak to that on the planning side, because when I joined planning in 2018, it was substantially smaller there, we noticed, and we also didn't show like a map of who was getting noticed, so people felt left out on, why did my neighbor get it but not me, and they didn't understand that. And we made those revisions, especially going out to 1,000 feet, which is a lot of work to actually add to that. And I think it's largely been a wild success for planning, because a lot of that, like, community opposition or misunderstanding of what's going on has really dissipated since we expanded that, and also carried the information with each agenda packet to basically say where we're noticing and what these notices look like and when we're doing it in the process. So I think there's certainly lessons we could learn, and maybe for smaller projects, we could compress that area of notification down to just very immediate areas, just not to pile on the work for staff. But I think that model, is a real good way to look at things, I guess, going forward. And obviously, early in the process, I think is critical, rather than somewhere down the line. So.
And I think we've talked a lot about how does that work and kind of what's a reasonable, I don't know if policy is the right term, although maybe we do want to adopt a policy, but starting to decide like what types of projects, and like the First Street roundabout is a good example. Like, does that warrant a 1,000-foot radius notice that we're going to re-landscape the roundabout? And, or if we're going to repave a street, does that warrant a 1,000-foot radius notice? Probably not, right? And do we need to ask for community feedback about what type of asphalt treatment we are using? Probably not. It's not to say that they might not have valuable feedback, but is that
this development,
it's a
that's
balance
all
between
maintenance
time.
stuff, but the
Yeah,
development is.
But I think you're right, and the roundabout we kind of saw as like a more than a maintenance project.
Improvement.
Yeah. But I think that that's what we've been talking about internally. Like I think obviously building a new park is a unique situation. It's like you said, that's not going to happen very often. But in those instances, I think it makes sense to notify the neighbors. We did do that with Roberts Lake. We're going through the design process for the east side of Roberts Lake. That's gone to the board committee a few times now. We did notify the people that back up to it. We didn't extend out into the neighborhood because we didn't think that was necessary. But we did notify the folks that live immediately adjacent to it and their fences back up to the park. And so some of it probably is just we have to use some good judgment. And I think the bike park is a good example of one of those ones where we've been working on this for 4 years or 5 years, and over the course of that, you just kind of start to assume that everybody knows about it, and they obviously don't. So, or they knew about it but didn't feel like they understood what was going on, which I think was the case with a lot of them. So.
I definitely would argue early notice, a broad range of area that we cover, and then inviting the people impacted to the meetings, letting them know when it's going to come to the board so that they can be present. Because I think a lot of people aren't going to follow our meetings and read what the agenda topics are to make sure it's not that week. So if it is pertaining to them and it's close to them, I think we should just be open-armed and invite them to those meetings and say, please come, it's coming before the board. But it has to be a broader demographic, I think, sometimes, like you were saying, than just those immediately impacted, because I want to hear from the whole community too. So I think that there is some maybe policy implementations that could help with some of those things, because we have heard a lot of feedback about, well, we didn't even know this was coming and now it's too late. And so I think early communication and then just inviting them to be part of that process throughout, and we'll learn how to receive that feedback and look at the whole demographic and not just the small margin of people that come in. So that'll be the challenge for us as a board and for staff. But I would definitely increase communication.
I agree, and I understand that some people just aren't going to engage until it's the last minute, right? And I understand that, and that wasn't necessarily my point. It was just, there was, for a couple of the different agenda items last time, there seemed to be some confusion about notices, and I didn't know this was happening until yesterday or things like that. And then with today, right, because the neighbors had gotten a specific notice, they were basically against it in its current form, but then there was nothing but positive feedback today. But the positive feedback came from the wider community, because this is, you know, a community project as opposed to the median. That's a localized. Obviously, it does. You know, you live 7 blocks away, you're not going to really walk your dog and care if it's a median with bluegrass or not. But anyway, thank you. I just wanted to know, you know, kind of the specifics of why the distances are different and who gets engaged in what. And that's all I had.
All right, thank you guys. With Lynn, Mr. Larson, with the tree committee, I don't know if you want to make one last report for Trustee Murphy, but I missed a report for you guys. So outgoing Mayor Pro Tem sent me a text that I didn't read till after the meeting, but it was kind of a report of that meeting, but some frustration maybe, and an idea of maybe wanting some funding to improve the website, or if you'd like to, if you could come to the front. If not, you could come to the front anyways.
I'm trying to remember what we did.
You were there too, weren't you? Rudy?
Mm-hmm.
She was at the tree board as a member of the public, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's this whole business of getting communication out to the community about the care of the trees.
Thank you.
And watering, of course, has been a big deal, but you know, the kinds of trees and so on, that it is the person's the homeowner, the property owners, I have to say that because some aren't homes, some are prisons, but property owners' responsibility. So the focus for the last few meetings has been this whole business of whose responsibility, how we get this information out to the community. And the tree board now, especially through the new member, Amy Lentz, is putting together poster materials, training. She's got a training video put together already. And so, you know, a PowerPoint type of thing. And so trying to get that out, who do we get this to? I volunteered to try to find out who are the homeowners associations, how can we get information out to the communities through the homeowners associations. I'm finding that's a difficult issue, finding out who these people are. But I've got the one in our neighborhood now, and I've discovered that one of our developers is the chairman of the board of one of the homeowners, and he and I are going to be having some discussions. But right now, it's getting this out, the website being part of that. You mentioned the website, and other social media. And I think there was some discussion. Yes, can we get some funding for some of this?
Right, well, you definitely need one for a mailer.
Yeah, mailings.
We
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
But I think clerk with the landing page. There's already a tree committee page, right? I think adding a PowerPoint to that, so it has a home, would.
We can certainly do that, and we can also link it on the home page as well.
And that way, at least when you're going on, and I'd love to help too. We can just point them. This is where it's at.
Yeah.
I can put it on Facebook too.
I don't have my notes with me, so I'm sort of trying to use my poor memory.
That's kind of what that text was about.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you. And I think that makes a
Did
lot
I
of
miss
sense.
anything?
No, I don't think so. I wasn't in on the details that you're talking about, but I know they're working on the education, and they're trying to find out where the HOAs are and who the board members are, so they can contact them.
Yeah.
And
It's
all
not
this
easy.
new development.
It's hard to hear. I don't know how hot the microphone works on the back there. So there's some conversation about the tree committees trying to reach out to HOAs and Metros to get their boards, so they can just then share that on. So hopefully it goes to the end resident.
Yeah, using them as distribution of information.
Do we have a map or any of that? 'Cause this does sound like an official, it's in the town's benefit for sure.
We generally know who, the HOA contacts and Metro District contacts are, and we agree getting information out to them is a good idea, because they're usually the ones giving the wrong information out to residents. I mean that sincerely, not in a negative way, that's the reality.
One of the staff
We get
members,
calls all the time where we say, the Metro District told me to call you, they said you're responsible for this.
Right, that's what Josh the Forester would say too. So is there a way that, once this PowerPoint's done and on a landing page, the town can share that out? At least, and then maybe down the road, we can look at.
because I was told by a staff member that, no, we don't really have a list of these, and they change so often, and.
It's true, they do change a lot.
But,
Typically, most of the HOAs and Metro Districts are managed by a couple of firms.
yeah, that's what I'm finding out, too.
Centennial Consulting Group, Pinnacle Consulting Group are kind of the two primary firms that do that work, and almost exclusively here in Berthoud, so. The HOAs are a little different, and they change very frequently. It seems like they have, oftentimes there's a new management firm for an HOA every 2 years, or less. But the Metro Districts are much more consistent.
So we can start there.
Yeah, I mean, can I work through you to get whatever you have there so I can report back to the committee? Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So thank you to the tree committee. I think I already spoke of Arbor Day. That was fantastic. And Sean, I think someone brought up outgoing Josh Embry, which is really sad to hear. Josh has been fantastic. He started when I did, and worked his way up. It's been fantastic to have him as a forester and also have someone with that actual accreditations he did. And through such a tremendous time for Berthoud Trees, where in the beginning we were just looking at cutting down ash. We had no plan, and really him and the various tree committees being able to develop such a great emerald ash borer response program. I mean, Josh single-handedly planted all those trees at Wagner, tons of fantastic stuff. So I was really sad, but also really happy to hear that he's applied for a Parks and Rec director position in a town larger than us. And,
He is the
got it.
Parks and Rec Director in Hammond, Idaho, I think so.
Fantastic. And so he's got to move it up, and best of luck to him. And I guess he said in the interview that they were really enamored, what really sold them on Josh was just his experience of updating tree policy in a town that's really exploding in growth. So that's happening in where he's going in Idaho, but that's great that he had that experience from here. So I'm sure we're already looking at getting a replacement for him.
We are advertising. I think we've actually got somebody we intend to interview already.
Awesome. Well, great. It's a great committee, and I'm glad we'll have another forester for him. Let's see, other than that, last week's Business Appreciation Week was fantastic. So thank you to staff, Chris, and to Walt Elish. The breakfast went over really well, in my opinion. Delicious food. May, Trustee Sorcelli was there. Executive Director Sorcelli was there too. Chris gave a great speech. Administrator Kirk gave a great speech.
This anytime you want.
No, not up here. You gave a great speech, and it was great just to see. I mean, we all know the familiar faces, and it's awesome to have them on board. It was fantastic to see new businesses, and their eyes just kind of open up at what this town is doing. These are businesses that have not been here long at all, and I got a chance to meet too and get a tour of their facilities. So, I mean, I could name them off, but we just have a lot of great new businesses coming in with really unique business models, doing really cool things. Walt and I and Administrator Kirk had an opportunity to tour 3 of them, and it was just blown away from Agile RF doing radio antennas in space, knowing that comes from Berthoud. Advanced thermoforming, doing essentially any kind of drinking fountain, soda dispenser. Sounds like we're the major supplier in the nation for these. He does all the plastic work. So if you go into 7-Eleven and you want to get a fountain soda, that ice tray below it, the decent chance it came from ATI on 2nd Street. Pretty cool. Parts for Air Force One. He would love to talk to you about. With amazing stories.
He's got a great story.
He's got great stories. And I would love to, Administrator Kirk, if it's possible, that we could get more of these tours and have the whole board involved, it was just so exciting for me. It would be great for all the trustees to see this. And
I'm sure
the businesses
Walt would be happy to organize those. Yeah.
just show, maybe we can do them on weekends, or if you can make it during the daytime, but show off what we do on Second Street. And we also did Kofi House and Wishful Living, and brand new owners of Kofi House, and they had some great ideas. Great to have them on board. Wishful Living gave their history, and the stuff that they're getting from Madagascar and selling to other areas and selling to Disney, and just stuff you don't know. And I thought I knew a lot growing up here, and just a fraction of what's going on in town. So it made me really proud and really thankful that the town gave a good amount of appreciation to those businesses, and we have good programs for them. So that was the breakfast. The dinner on Thursday night, I skipped the MPO meeting to attend, and it was a small group, but it was a different experience, very intimate. We were all able to sit up at the buy-in conference room and just share stories. It was very informal, and Guarantee Bank, actually I think we put that on, but they brought the food. But it was just really great. So it made me really proud to be here, and proud to have you guys and the staff, and just unbelievable that we have an opportunity to be on the board at this particular time in Berthoud's history. Just, our budget and the businesses we are attracting is really extraordinary. So thank you for that. I attended a 2-hour MPO meeting today for transportation demand management. So we are working as a region to have a regional program, kind of in a nutshell, all these different private and public entities that have different transportation needs and can offer transportation to house them in one location. If you're familiar with the One Call, One Click program, this is kind of a bigger push for that. And it was great. We had big corporations in there interested, and we had municipalities, MPOs, counties. So we developed a 1-year plan on how to go forward, and a 5-year plan of what we want to see in 5 years. A lot of that comes down to funding and how we're going to do that. But yeah, it was a great meeting for that. So that's it. Oh, I did want to congratulate May and Sean Murphy. I saw on Facebook you guys fielded some tough questions, so I can understand why the communication want, and I thought you guys handled them very professionally. So thank you. I agree. It's great to have residents come in, and so I'm just very appreciative of that. And that is the end of my reports. So we can go on to staff.
Nothing else from me, Mayor.
Yeah, Attorney Smith. Thank you.
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right. Well. Okay. If anyone want to move us into executive session?
I'll make the motion. I move to enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 4EI to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing a strategy for negotiation, and instructing negotiators. And the following details are provided: potential property acquisition.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Stevens has moved on the executive session. Trustee Sorcelli has seconded. Quickly have a roll call vote on that.
Trustee Hughes?
Yes.
Trustee Murphy?
Yes.
Trustee Sorcelli?
Yes.
Trustee Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck?
Yes. All right, that concludes the regular meeting. Thank you all.